Morning. Beautiful morning, bright and early. We got a lot of work to do. Let's get at it. So I've got a tree that's got to come down, and in review of our plan that we talked about, first step is to identify hazards and obstacles. In turn, that'll give me a good place for the tree to fell without being hung up by other trees or not in the road, that kind of thing. We're going to then do the side lean, side to side and front to back, get my lean information. That will help determine my escape route side. Remember, 45-degree angle, 15-foot max, or to about 15 foot. And we're then going to do the back cut plan, which in my situation is always a bore cut. Now, we talked a little bit about that, but I've got a tree here with a lot of lean. I want to bore cut into the tree because the hinge gets set up first and release it from the back, and it's going to allow the hinge to work all the way down. If I just start cutting into a tree from the back with a lot of forward lean, then it has a chance to barber chair or split the tree. And what I mean by that is, let me just get a little green stem here. If I've got a tree with a lot of forward lean on it, and I just start cutting from the back and the chain's maybe a little dull or the saw isn't running as well as it should, now we call it chase the cut. You got to get in there and get it done, because as you start cutting in the back, the kerf starts allowing the top to move forward, and then leverage starts creating a bending action here in the back. And what happens is you don't have the hinge thin enough, quick enough. It's very thick. It doesn't allow it to release at the base. It creates pressure up here to where the tree will, what we call barber chair. And in the old day, you had, as you keep bending this, it actually splits, and then the tree seeks the stump, so to speak. Very, very dangerous, because you're down here focused to the cut, the back cut, as we're talking about, and you're not aware of what's going up ahead. You also are going to have a severe productivity loss, obviously, with that, and dollar loss if you're cutting the tree for boards. It's dangerous, it's not productive, it's not the right thing to do. So I'm going to use a bore cut for sure as we finish up the back cut plan on that. So let's take information. If you pick a stick up off the ground to read height from your cheek out, you're going to make two sections of line. So from here to the end of my stick equals from here to my cheek, or to my eye, if you will. Lowering your shoulders down to the base of the tree, looking at it here. When that is framed at the base, and when you look at the top, you can walk forward or backwards so that you frame the top of the tree at the top of the stick. That line sight going up forms the third side of a right triangle, and from that place where you're standing, that's where that tree will come down. And as I look out here, I get a little bit better view of my surrounding. I've got a clear base. We've got other trees that become the only obstacle I'm dealing with for the most part. I got a vehicle in the back. We've got a little tree, some protection. The ground is good. The wind is not bad at all. The condition of the tree has some flare to it, which is good. So we do have dead branches as we go up the tree. I do have a dead one off the back here I want to be concerned about. It could be close to an escape route if I go that way, but I certainly want to stay to 45 degree, and I'll avoid that limb up at the top. So at about 30 feet out, I'm going to take information on the side lean. I'll take information with my back to that point. It's important that you take information with right in line of where you're working, because if you change the angle, it's going to change the direction. If I say I want that tree to go up by that spud, and I do my side line here, right, left, get the crown frame, drop a plumb line down, I get 3 feet of side lean here, where in this position, I actually right, left, drop a plumb line down from the center point, I actually have a straight tree. So we're going to aim directly at the position where we want that to go to that tree. From here, and you guys can see out, trees are two-dimensional out here. I can tell the side lean, but I can't tell if the tree is leaning forward or back. So I'm going to go 90 degrees adjacent and take the same information. From here to 90, right hand, furthest branch to the right, left hand, wow, that branch is way out there. We know we've got a lot of forward lean. And again, that's where that bore cut comes into play. I want to set up the hinge first to have the hinge the right size, And that will not allow the pressure to build up and leverage to create pressure at the base, at the stem, so that the hinge and the notch will work all the way down without fracturing. So pretty good to go on that respect. All your notches are cut on this side of the tree, and I'll be in this position here looking down the felling mark. Now, where exactly do I want to cut the notch? Well, what exactly are you cutting a tree for? This is pretty much going to be firewood, or it's just going to be left naturally in the area here. So I can cut the notch wherever I want. If I'm doing it for boards or something for a value, I'm going to cut it way, way down low, maybe to preserve that dollars in the wood up above. I like to, if I have the choice of firewood cutting a tree, I like to work right off of this position, having the motor of the saw or the back handle on my leg. That way it positions my body so I can get behind the saw. Real important that I look down this felling mark, because if you're standing here like this looking, you can't tell. You've got to, it's a little bit of a difference, but you got to get way behind it and look down the saw. Again, I'm going to point right to where I want the tree to go. Now, if the tree had 2 feet of side lean to the left, let's say it's leaning to the left, and I aim where I want it to go, and the tree goes down, I missed my mark. So what I do to compensate again is I would aim not where I want it to go, but I would aim 2 feet offsetting that. So as I aim this way with my notch or my felling mark on my saw, the tree goes and brings the point right to where I want it to go based on offsetting that aim on my saw. Okay? So in this case, I'm going to cut this notch about right in this area here. If I'm on this side, all your notches are cut on this side because the saw is designed to look down that felling mark. You can't do it from this side. You can't get to a position where you can see the line, so all notches would be cut on this side of the tree, and then you would want to get on the other side or on the side that you're escaping to, retreating to, because we don't want to be going back across the back of the tree. So I'm going to put the notch in on this side. The first thing I say is, what do I have at 45-degree angle, 15 feet of the stump? And I've got some brush I got to clean up, obviously, as part of my assessment. So I'm going to clean that, and then I'm going to go right downhill here to 15 feet. I'm good to go. That way I can do all my work on this side of the tree. Okay, so I planned retreat. Next part of the plan, step 4, is the hinge calculation. And remember, we come up at 4.5 feet above the bottom because we want to get above this flare. If we measure the tree down below here and it's 40 inches, and I come up and put a 4-inch hinge in this tree, it's too thick and it's going to build up pressure, and we could have a barber chair situation, or maybe the tree doesn't even go readily, and now we got cutting and more things going on. Very dangerous. So I want to come up at 4.5 feet, and when I measure that tree, it comes out at 4.5 feet across and about 15 inches. So remember, our hinge calculation was 10% of the DBH, or about 1.5 or 1.5 inches is what I want for a hinge. Whether you cut from the back or you bore cut, you want to always have that hinge. You have to have that hinge size in there. That's the optimum size to hold the tree, allow the tree to work, and the safest way to do it. The hinge is the most important part of this plan. Step 5 is that back cut. So I'll be over here, and we're going to bore cut through the center of the tree, move up, make my 1.5 inch hinge, go to the back, leave a little piece. It'll allow me to reposition, check the wind, check all you guys, make sure things are safe, nobody's coming up and down this road, and then I'll release that back piece. So step 5 is designed for you to say, yes, I'm going to proceed, or no, I'm not. And I feel confident and competent in what I'm doing here, so I'm going to say I'm going to proceed. But there are many times, gang, that I get to step 5 and say, no, I'm going to walk away from it. I need rope, I need rigging, I need help, I need machinery. I could just say it's a situation for an arborist to loft, and I walk away from it. I'm going to proceed with my plan on this situation. So let's get the saw started. Chain brake saw was on. As we talked about, you can start it on the ground, with your toe through the stirrup, or your heel in the back, because the saw is wider to protect your hand, or I could kneel down on it. Remember that the saw bar does pitch up to keep it out of the dirt for you if you are starting on the ground. The second way to start it, chain brake on obviously, is to leg lock it. Put it under your knee, because the rule is, and the right thing to do, you don't want to have any movement of that bar while you're cutting a tree. So I'm gonna lock this in, lock my arm out, and I'm gonna give it a tug and lower the idle down. I wanna let the saw warm up. I'm gonna do that by idling here, and then I wanna give it some motion, because this is an environmental friendly oiler. I want it to oil, and it does oil when the chain goes around. So we got oil coming out, we're good to go. I then want to do that performance check. So I'm going to take the saw up to full speed and listen for that 4-stroke or dieseling or sore throat sound, if you will. That controls the H, the high speed circuit, or the H screw on a normal adjusted carburetor, if you will. So I'm going to take it up to full speed. You can hear right away that it's got that dance or that little sore throat sound. It's not leaned out too straight or flat line, so we're good to go. I don't have any movement of the chain at idle. That will be the T circuit, the throttle circuit. And then I want to roll the saw right, left. It doesn't stall or stutter. And I want to hit the throttle, make sure it's very snappy up and down. So we're good to go. Now, on my notch, I'm going to use an open face notch. We talked about those 3 notches. You have a standard notch, 45 degrees, very deep. The bottom cut's level with the lay of the land. You have the Humboldt, which is upside down, if you will, so the notch would slide out. It also created a step back cut, so the tree doesn't kick off the back as readily. And if you combine the two and open it up to 70 or more, you get an open face notch. The open face notch, to me, is preferred, because instead of the tree stopping at 45 when the notch closes, it allows the hinge to work all the way to the ground, or about 70 to 90 degrees. So that's what I want. I want that notch face to close once I'm on the ground. Okay? So we'll put an open face notch in it. First thing we want to do is clean up that brush, as we talked about. I'm going to get this axe somewhere where it's readily available if I do need it for anything, but I don't want it exactly in my escape route. Chainsaws have 2 speeds, idle and full bore. You have a lot of control, it's very smooth, less vibration when it's running at full speed. So I'm going to position my body here. The chainsaws are built a nice, comfortable hold in the handle so that it gives you that 70-degree pitch automatically. It's also nice and level. We want that cut to be level, because when I make this cut here, holding it level will allow me to match the bottom cut much more easily. So I'm going to hold the saw here at 70 degrees. I want to sight down to where I want the tree to go, and I'm going to start my cut. But I'm not going to look at what I'm doing. If I say this is where I want the tree to go and start looking at what I'm doing, I've just changed the direction of the cut. So I want to stay in here focused so that the line is going right at my marker out there until the saw gets bit into the wood. Okay, so let's get that part done. Now that the saw is into the wood, it will not turn on me. So now I want to focus to being 80% across the face of this tree for my hinge. check to make sure I'm 80% across the face, pretty close. From here to here, it could be just a little bit more work. So my tree diameter from here to here is 100. From here to here, oh, about 80%. I think we're good to go. So we're gonna now make the bottom cut with the lay of the land. It's pretty level here. So I literally, because I made this cut level, pull the saw, rotate it again. We got another good balance point here. It's easier to start on one corner and match the other than start out here and have to match two. So because I've leveled the cut, if I start level, I'm gonna swing around here looking through the curve, cutting to when those cuts match. I don't want to bypass that cut. That'll put pressure on the trunk right away when the tree moves. So we have our 70-degree open face notch, about 80% across the face. We talked about cutting so that you have a clean apex where the top and bottom cut come together. You want that to be clean. Now, this is fine. I wanted to leave just a hair bit of this to show you that if this cut goes down or in further than the width of the chain, which is 3/8 of an inch roughly, then you've got too much bypass. You got to clean that up by taking the bottom or recutting both sides of the top cut to get that to be perfectly clean. Because the cut is not deeper than 3/8, either down or in, which is wider than the chain itself, this cut is perfectly okay. And as you can tell, it's going to allow the tree to come down. The face notch will close on the bottom cut. It won't close in the kerf or this bypass, which again is very dangerous. So we're ready to start our back cut plan, which is mine is a bore cut. And remember, we want to review what we talked about earlier about reactive forces of the saw. When you use the bottom of the bar, the tendency is to pull away from you. And again, that equates to a good stance, be anchored down, good terrain, nothing there that's going to create trip hazard or pull me over or snag me. On the top of the bar when you're cutting, it's going to create push into your body. And if you touch the top corner of the bar to wood, it's going to kick very violently. So to go through the center of this tree, because I want to set up my hinge first, not cutting from the back, I don't want to start with the top cut. I actually want to start with the bottom of the bar, and as it bites in, you'll see I'm going to allow the pulling chain on the bottom to pull me right through the tree. I don't want to bore cut in parallel. I really am going to angle back slightly away from the cut and then come up. That's the beauty of the bore cut. It gives me time to set that hinge perfectly first in my back cut. Pushing chain, so I like to anchor my body on the saw so I save energy. It's going to tend to push back as I'm using the top of the bar. An inch and a half, pretty darn close. Setting the hinge up first with a bore cut. And remember, the chain brake should be on at all times other than when you're not cutting. So when you're pulling the saw out, you want to make sure that chain brake is on. Because the tendency is when you pull to hit the throttle, if you're pulling out and you hit the throttle, the energy goes to the top corner, it kicks in the radius of plane, it's going to kick right into the hinge, and you can cut that hinge off. If the hinge is the most important part of the plan, that chain brake needs to be on before you pull that saw out. So we've got our hinge set perfectly to 1.5 inch. We now want to cut to the back, holding wood on the back of the same dimension, 10%. So that'll be about 1.5 inch at the thickest part, holding in the back. Remember, the bark does not count. So we've got a tree here that's got a little bit of bark, about 1/4 of an inch. I want about 1.5 inches of hardwood in the back, and I want to leave that holding wood on the good side of the tree where I'm at. I'm also going to tap a wedge in. No harm, no foul. The time to find out you need a wedge is before it's sitting down on your saw. So we've got the tree set up with our back strap now on the back, which is 10% of the DBH, just like the hinge. 10% of 15 would be 1.5. So we want to have an imaginary line going across that exposes 1.5 inches at the fattest part that is hardwood, remember. We don't want the bark, that doesn't count, it's very weak fiber. Now I could have, as I was cutting to leave this back strap, after the hinge was set up, cutting towards the back, could have just cut out. But I don't like that because, as we mentioned, 85% of injury occurring within 15 feet of the stump. If I cut out, that tree is moving and I'm right on the tree. That's a bad position to be. By bore cutting, I set the hinge up first. I come back, leave that holding wood. It allows me to position my body about 4 to 5 feet already away from the tree. Every foot counts. It also gives me a chance to recheck my crew, check conditions, no wind, nobody coming down the road before I proceed. It's the last chance to stop the plant. All clear, tree coming down. Before I come into the area, I want to make sure nothing ahead has been hit or come down, springs back, and then I want to give a command, all clear. We're good to go to come into our stump. So if we take a look at our stump, there's a lot we can tell about our plan as to if things went well or if we had some difficulty. The first thing you can see is that our hinge here is 80% across the diameter, roughly 80% the diameter of the tree. Now we focused 80% because if we went to 100%, the hinge goes all the way across the middle, which incorporates a lot of the heartwood of the tree, which is the dead fiber wood, which doesn't bend as readily and doesn't hold, it's not strong, it's brittle and it breaks, if you will. So we got our hinge at 80% and we've got it running in the sapwood, good strong wood fiber, if you will. The other thing we've got regarding the hinge is we said we wanted a plan on our hinge for 1.5 inches, and that is right at about 1.5 inches, and that is right at about 1.5 inches. So we're pretty uniform, and again, that bore cut allows me to go in and set the hinge up first instead of me trying to cut from the back and race and set the hinge up as the tree is moving. So it allowed me to get my full 1.5 inches and my 80% diameter. We also had an open face notch. As we showed you, the notch face was opened to 70 degrees or more, which allows the hinge to work and the tree to get to the ground before it puts pressure and breaks this hinge. We also can look at fiber tear off of the hinge. If you're tearing huge amounts of fiber, generally that's an indication that the hinge was too thick for that particular diameter of tree. It tears also sometimes a little higher, if you notice in the center here, than on the ends, because this was just at the edge of the heartwood. Again, that doesn't want to bend as readily. It wants to break and split, and that's what you see, the back of the split going up off of the hinge. We also have a nice elevated apex here, and again, we want that to be equal or elevated no more than 2 inches. And the reason for that back cut being elevated slightly is that as the tree is falling, it pushes back on this stump shot or stair step, if you will, and it keeps motion of the tree going forward such that it won't slip off the back. We've also got a nice holding piece about 1.5 inches at the back of the hardwood only. So I'd say this stump checks out to being a pretty good score, and it did give us a good result. I'll tell you what is a good result is I'm safe and you're safe. All clear, tree coming down. So now that the tree's down, we want to limb and bucket. Limbing and bucking is merely taking off the limbs flush to the trunk, and then we want to buck or cut it cross sections for whatever our use is. And this tree is just going to be for firewood, so we can make those cuts at any lengths we want, really. We're not subject to cutting it for boards at 16 feet or anything, so we can pretty much, we have a lot of flexibility with that. We first want to look at the ability for this tree to roll or twist. That would determine work position inside. I think if it had any ability at all to go anyway, it's going to the right, so I like being on the left, but generally with this pine, the branches are anchored in, it's pretty stable. I also want to look at the back and forth pressure from the stump to the top of the tree canopy, and it looks again that it's pretty anchored by the branches. We're on a little bit of a slope, but not much, and this will have the ability then to hold itself without shifting. We then look at up and down pressure, because we always want to make our cuts starting on the compression side and finishing on the tension side. And we have gravity and we have a tree here, so we definitely have that. So I want to cut these branches off first here, because there is no pressure to them, and we'll get up further and then we'll have another discussion about compression and tension cuts. A lot of pressure on that. Okay, so we're doing okay, but I want to show you something up here. We've got these two branches which are under severe bind, compression on the top side over on this other side of the tree, and compression or the tension, excuse me, on the side closest to me, and those are very dangerous situations. I'm going to move to the other side of the tree and we're going to show you how to deal with that. So as we talked about, we have a lot of compression here. That branch can bind down on the chain and bar very quickly, faster than I have reaction time or response. And that's what these cuts are about. Mismatched cuts are about giving us time to analyze the pressure and time to before it binds on the saw. So what I'm going to do is, in the compression side, because we're always starting on that compression side, instead of using the saw to cut directly into the branch, which can bind very quickly, I'm just going to shave up on that side, taking little bits of wood off at a time until a point where the pressure of that branch exceeds the strength of the wood to hold it, and it will break at that time without shattering, and then I can finish the cut. Let me finish off these branches back here too. spring pulls. I still want to secure myself a good escape path at a 45-degree angle in case I got to go somewhere. Okay, so we're going to start shaving this on the compression side. We want to do this slowly, little bits of fiber again, so the pressure gets to a point where it exceeds the strength of the wood. See the movement? And there we go. You can see how much pressure. We've taken all the fight out of it. Now we can go to the tension side and release that safely. Want to have a good area footing-wise. And we want to repeat that process. So we relieve the pressure by taking away the wood fiber slowly and let the pressure work against itself. So I want to finish limbing going up the tree here, and this limb here, while there's not a lot of weight to it, but it looks like it's compressing on the bottom. So I'll make that cut on the bottom, a third, read the kerf. You know, if the kerf doesn't collapse, I could literally keep going, but I like to offset that cut or mismatch the cut, moving closer to the stem about an inch, because that's going to give me an idea if there's pressure at all on any of these branches before I finish the cut. And that way it doesn't spring off back to me where I might step back, stumble, fall, roll over some of these branches. I have a little bit more control using two cuts, starting on the compression first, finishing on the tension about an inch closer to the stump, and not matching the cuts, but mismatching, moving over an inch. So that's the plan here. There is no weight on this branch, so we'll pretty much cut that off in these two. Prime example, I don't want to walk by this to go cut this branch, because if this tree does roll, this becomes a very bad potential hazard for me for sure. When I get up to this branch here, really tough to read because it's in the ground pushing. Can't tell if it's pushing up, heaving, creating compression on the bottom and tension on the top, or if it's creating compression on the top and tension on the bottom. So I'm going to start with a cut on the bottom and read the kerf. Remember, if the kerf collapses, starts collapsing, stop, because I am cutting on the compression side of the wood. Move over an inch, mismatch the cut from the tension side. Always finish on that tension side where the kerf is opening up. Right away when I start this cut, the kerf starts to open up. So there's definitely compression on the top. So I'm just going to read this kerf. As long as it's opening up straight down, I know the movement is down, I'm good to go. If that cut started to close right away, again, I move closer to the stump by an inch and offset that cut. A lot of pressure on this one. I can see too that the branch is coming back this way a little bit. And now I can see that it is rolling away from me. great example there. Made the cut on the tension. It didn't move, didn't think there's any pressure. When I come back on the top though, it did start to compress when I mismatched the wood fiber. When all those fibers are cut, even though they didn't match, it exposes its hand. So I'm now going to go back into the tension side where it would have pinched. I'm now going to cut through the branch safely without creating a pinch hazard on my saw, which then in turn could create a hazard to me. So I've got my branches limbed up to this far, and I want to talk about compression and tension cuts. Now, if you look at this tree, gravity is pushing down on the top of this. So I believe it looks like it's compressing on the top, if you will. If this were a table with legs pushing down on it, gravity is creating compression on the top and tension or stretch on the bottom of the fiber. So I want to cut into this until the kerf, which is the width of the cut, starts to close. I'm going to stop, pull the saw out. I'm going to put a wedge in, which will occupy the kerf, and I'll go back in and finish that cut, or finish from the tension side, if you will, cut up until we get a clean cut on that. Remember that you always cut the compression first and finish on the tension, or the tension last. The tension fiber last. Compression first, tension last. Kerf starts to close. I can take a wedge, knock it in. I could either come out and finish from the tension side, or since I've got that kerf occupied, I can continue to cut. It won't get pinched. Another use of the wedge is, we talked about the bar angles up, and it matches the contour of that. We can use that wedge as a barrier underneath the tree. I could pound it in with my axe and make that cut over the wedge, so that if the saw does come down into the dirt, obviously you have a barrier of a polymer wedge which does no damage to the chain at all as protection. I also can use the wedge as I buck this. Since the bar is angled up, if I cut down to the heel of the handle and down so that the motor is flat on the ground, I still leave some hinge wood uncut at the bottom. I'm then going to put a wedge in the top of that cut and hit it with an axe, and you'll see that it puts taper on both ends. It's going to lift that wood up right up off the ground where I'm cutting, and then I can finish the cut naturally with airspace, not into the dirt, so I'm not going to dull my chain. Making this cut, I'm always looking at that kerf. It starts closing, I want to stop, move to a different side. So I finished my cut without pinching and in the airspace, without getting the bar and chain into the dirt, so I don't have dull chain. So another cut we can make to help expose the pressure so that I can get in a better work position, a better side on the tension side, away from where the wood is moving, would be a tongue and groove cut. And this cut is going to be one that I bore cut through the center. I'm going to come to the top. I believe this is again the compression side. Cut about a third, or until I bypass that first bore cut, and then I'm going to finish the cut on the bottom, always looking at the cuts that I make, because if those cuts collapse on my side, I know the movement of the wood is that way, I'm a good side of the wood to finish. If it opens up on top, I know I need to extend my distance, not to get my chin or anything up where that wood could spring. If it opens up on the bottom, then I know it's moving down. Again, I want to make sure I'm on the uphill side, which I am, and I also want to make sure that I don't have that wood coming down near my feet or anything that way. So first thing I'm going to do is bore cut right through the center. Okay, I'm then going to make a compression cut on the top. Finish with a tension cut on the bottom. And because those kerfs did not change, there's pretty much equal pressure on this. In other words, now that we've taken all the weight off down yonder, it's pretty much sitting, I believe, on these branches. So at this point, I can go back into probably the bottom side here where it is tensioning where I originally thought, and finish the cut. Let me show you a little bit more about what that looks like here on this part that's elevated. I bore cut to the center, make a cut, compression, and make a cut on the tension side. And you can see that all three cuts have severed all of the grain fiber in the tree, and that would expose the pressure if there is any. Obviously there's no weight here, but if this center kerf collapses and it's opening on the other side, I know movement is moving away from me. If this starts opening up, closes on the other side, I know it's coming at me. If this one opens up, I know movement is up. If this one opens up, I know movement is down. So it gives me opportunity to move, reposition myself to make a cut away from where these branches may be flying. Good. So it's called a tongue and groove cut because it obviously looks like tongue and groove, like paneling or something. Again, what we've done is we've severed all the fiber through the tree, and if there's pressure, that pressure is going to go to those curve cuts, and it's going to show me where the pressure is and where I need to stand so I can make that cut safely. Well, we started out today talking about accidents being planned events, and we talked about a lot of planning processes. We worked those plans, we were competent as we got to the last step, and we implemented them. We had a good day at Stark. We got quite a bit more work to do, but boy, you know, fatigue leads to injury. That overwhelmingly happens this time of the day, so I know my limits. I'm going to get up bright and early in the morning and start up again. Had a great day. Here's how I look at it. I'm safe. You guys are safe. Down the road, be safe out there.